So it's 7:05. I think we should start to honour everybody's time, and especially Leanne's, who's almost at midnight, well past her bedtime. This is the first time we've put out a call like this in English. It's very exciting, a little bit nerve-wracking. But we've been a collective for 4 years now, and we've been working on something we call the Forest of Hope, which probably some of you have seen. That's why you're here. And we would like to invite you to join us on a new call to stitch that we have this year. And so, well, I'm Dora Napolitano. I live in Mexico City. I grew up in the UK with Argentine parents. And just so you can place me and understand why my English is the way it is. And Adriana is in Argentina, in the greater Buenos Aires area. And a couple others might join us in the next few minutes from Latin America, but it's very early at this end of the world. So for now, it's just the two of us. And without further ado, I would like to start sharing screen. I don't know, it would be lovely if you could leave us your names in the chat and where you are, just so that we know who's with us. And I feel like it's important for everybody to join us in as much as possible without wanting to make this very long. We're hoping it will be less than an hour. So if you want to put questions in the chat, maybe we'll make some breaks to answer questions as they come up. Hope that sounds good for everybody. This is what we want to talk about. This is like a summary of everything I want to say today, to squeeze it in. So why are we doing this project? Who are we? What is the Forest of Hope? And the practicalities of joining in. Essentially, this is a call to artivate. I think the more common name in English is craftivate or craftivism, but I don't know. In Spanish we say artivismo, so I went with artivate. The idea is on the one hand to strengthen grassroots groups through stitchery. I think lots of you are stitchers, so I won't need to convince you of how that happens, but also to make changes visible in our local communities, as we'll see. And then also to make a kind of a public, international public, take an international public message to COP30 in Brazil, and who knows beyond. So yeah, put the questions in the chat and we will come back to them as we go along. Why do we need to create a textile ecosystem? The main and simplest reason I feel is that we need to restore hope. I'm not going to go into the details. I think everybody here already knows that we're in a climate crisis, a crisis of injustice, a social crisis. Democracy is in the strangest place that I'm aware of in the last several hundred years. There's violence in so many places. Organized crime seems to be running so many of our governments these days. And so, yeah, we also have a crisis of leadership, which has led obviously to widespread loss of hope and a sense that we don't have any power and there's a kind of futility that we can't change anything. That's certainly something I feel in Mexico City. So many people are concerned about climate change, but almost nobody ever talks about it because it's kind of hopeless, useless, irrelevant. And then we have the issue of UN climate conferences not really fulfilling their aims, not fit for purpose. Last year around COP, what's it called? The group of Rome or whatever they're called actually wrote to the COP saying that it wasn't working and that they needed to change. And as far as I'm aware, no significant changes have been made. So we need to restore hope. And there are lots of reasons for making people feel that we have hope, because in fact, most of the global population would prefer to care for the earth. Unfortunately, lots of people who are concerned and who would prefer to care for the earth think they're the only ones. And so as I said, people don't talk about it, people don't feel that there's anything they can do. And yet, we are the majority. And we know that there are millions of tiny, local, meaningful actions taking place in spite of the fact that people feel that they can't do anything. So I would like to argue, and I work on focusing on those small, meaningful actions as a way of seeing that the Great Turning has begun. I don't know how many of you have read Active Hope, but I found that a really powerful way to think. I also really believe that the future has to be collective or it will not be. And therefore, we have to get together. We have to find ways to communicate with our neighbours. We have to find friendly and appealing ways to bring them in, to sit them down at the table with us so that they can share and exchange words with us. And there's that famous quote by Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And I think art is special. It reaches you, it touches you in a different way. And maybe it's the kind of thing that can break through the outer shell that so many people have created for themselves to keep plugging on in these very anonymous, quite hostile urban environments. And well, I think stitching is especially powerful. The project that we're proposing is art without waste, because we don't buy any new fabric. We encourage everybody to use their old clothes, don't throw anything out, turn it into art. Also, it's a kind of collective art. It's very focused on returning to the idea of people sitting around a table, and because you're stitching and you're having a cup of tea or a mate in Argentina, there's a different way of sharing, and therefore conversations can be different. You're more relaxed, you're more open, you can hear things in a different way. The idea of making together especially is to inspire us as makers to recover our hope, but then also it's something that materializes. It's a finished piece that you can then show to other people. And when you show it to other people, you can invite them to be part, which is actually what we need to do. You know, lots of people say to me, oh, I can't join in because I don't know how to stitch. I've never embroidered anything in my life. And I'm like, that really doesn't matter, because that's exactly how we need people to join in the climate movement. Just, you don't need to be an expert on climate to be doing something. Everybody's stitches are good, big and small, wonky or straight. We need everybody's stitches, otherwise we're not going to make it. And finally, art to denounce. So there are lots and lots and lots, and I have days when I'm overwhelmed with the amount of reports coming in about new and different ways in which so many local groups, Indigenous communities and urban communities are being pushed aside for one more development project. So we have so much to denounce. So you may be asking yourself, who are we? We are mostly women, not exclusively, but mostly women concerned about the state of the environment in our localities and globally. And we seek to express ourselves as part of nature through the medium of used fabrics, which is, as I was saying, an artistic medium with minimum environmental impact, because there are already so many textiles in the world. We don't need to buy another thing. We are, well, as I was saying, I'm in Mexico City, Adriana is in Buenos Aires in Argentina, and there are stitchers in the Sao Paulo area in Brazil, and in Colombia, and in Chile, and in Sweden. I think I saw Anki come into the group just now. And really, we would love for this project to go even more global, because I think one of the things that it would be even more powerful would be to show this strength of feeling across the world. I think, as I was saying, the vast majority of people everywhere are so ready for a change, even when they don't even know exactly what that change would look like. But we'll come into that as well. So the Forest of Hope itself, I had been offering an online workshop in ecological stitching and urban gardens in the pandemic in 2020. And when it ended, one of the women in Argentina said, "No, we can't stop here. This is amazing. What are we going to do next?" And I had no idea, to be honest. I was exhausted. It was really hard work organizing 60 workshops in 6 months. But she created a WhatsApp group, and from that WhatsApp group, the collective was born. Initially, there were just 14 of us in 2020, and we started getting together. We were in 4 different countries, I think, 6 different cities, something like that. And we wanted to do something together, but we didn't know how, with so much distance between us. And we decided to start stitching trees, which you can see in the photograph, all on the same size, 30 by 60 centimeters, with buttons and buttonholes, so that when the trees all came together, we could put them together like a forest. Our challenge in 2021 was to get that Forest of Hope to COP. Initially, as I said, there were 14 of us, and we put it on social media. And within 3 months, we received 157 embroideries from 10 different countries. That was a very, very powerful moment, opening boxes and boxes and boxes of embroideries. And in that process, we started to think about what our principles were. And one that really resonated with all of us was the idea of stubborn optimism, which I read in a book by Christiana Figueres. You may have read it, The Future We Choose. The idea that we know the situation is bleak and difficult, but yet there are moments of brilliance and light at the end of the tunnel, and there are lots of projects that are doing things, and we can choose which, in the vocabulary of active hope, we can choose which narrative we want to be in. And I choose to be in the one that we are making a change, and this change is already happening. So after the COP, which was like most COPs, we decided that actually our message, it was much more important to take it to our neighbours and our communities to inspire more people to connect. And in 2022 to 23, the forest traveled around Mexico, and now it's been in Argentina since 2023. It's being installed tomorrow in a public library very near where Adriana lives. I think she has to run off and install it after this meeting, in fact. And that's very special because that reaches out to local communities, and gives people an opportunity and a space to talk about these issues. And so the forest has been growing. On each stop, each time it's installed, new people join in, new people start stitching, new people bring their pieces. So initially we started stitching just trees, and then we decided to add more species to the forest. And in 2023, a new kind of contribution joined the forest in Argentina. And these were collective pieces created by citizen groups that were already taking action. That was, for me, very exciting because now there are actual examples of hope in the forest. I just wanted to put in a picture so you can see like a spread. This is actually only a tiny piece of the forest. It's one wall of the forest installed in Brighton, in fact, just before COP26. This, at the time, was probably less than a quarter of the whole forest, and the forest is now 3 times as big. So this is just a tiny, tiny little piece, but that's how it looks, to give you a visual. Oh, hello, what a lovely giggle. And so this year, our call to stitch is for people who want to. We are still receiving with much joy all individual trees and other species inspired by your local biodiversity. But we also really want to add this element that happened spontaneously in Argentina in 2023, to include humans as a positive piece of the story. We want the Forest of Hope to be able to talk about what people are already doing, because there's this sense that not enough or almost nothing is being done about climate change in some of our countries in Latin America. But we also want to invite people to imagine what could be achieved if everyone did all that they could. Those of you who are joining us from the UK, I think there were several, You may have heard of transition movement, you may have heard of Rob Hopkins, you may have heard of his wonderful work on imagination. Being able to connect with that very real possibility of how things could be otherwise than they are is, I think, really disruptive, really powerful, and fills us with hope, because suddenly you visualize something different. And so we hope that these kinds of options that we will come to in more detail can really help to strengthen, connect grassroots groups, make them aware also of the wonderfulness of the thing that they are doing, and then ultimately to take an ever leafier and more hopeful forest to COP30. So what can we actually do? The practical bits. I already mentioned the buttons and the buttonholes. Forest is super flexible and it fits almost in all spaces, because you can take it apart and put it back together. It's never put up twice in exactly the same way. It's always new, it's always different. Therefore, it's really important that you measure precisely where you put your buttons and your buttonholes, because otherwise you present your installer, who may be at a great distance, with a great practical problem. So I don't know if you can see down here on the right, you can see the buttons of the tree above and the buttonholes of the tree below. I already mentioned it, but I will keep on repeating it. We only use old textiles. Please do not buy fabric. The textile industry is one of the most damaging in the world, second only to the petrochemical industry. And it's a very important part of this collective project. We really don't want to do any more harm. And there is so much material out there. It's just a question of connecting with the people who are collecting it. Textile techniques, basically anything goes. Embroidery, applique, patchwork, knitting and weaving, as long as it's in the size. I do have I put a few question marks on painting, because the Forest of Hope is often installed outdoors. And although when the rain comes, we try and take it down as quick as possible and protect it, sometimes that's not possible. For example, in Glasgow, the forest went out on the march, and I don't know if any of you were there, but it poured with rain and it was very cold. And some of the colours did run on some of the pieces. So if you're dyeing fabrics or painting fabrics, please, please, please be as sure as you can that they are colour fast. And avoid glue where possible. Prefer any kind of stitch to hold the pieces in place. Right, and this is just a message for anybody that's starting. We would like to ask you to register that you are joining the forest, so that we can all be in touch, because part of this project is about connecting and about talking to each other and about re-knitting the fabric of our societies. So we're going to try and arrange events where people can talk to each other, can share their projects, can share what they're stitching. We are entirely a volunteer group, so we are working as much as we can to make this happen, but we hope to have at least 2 sessions in English before November, where people can exchange and get to know each other and all that. So we need you to register in order to be able to connect us all up. And when you finished your piece, we will be inviting you to tell us why you stitched what you stitched and what you felt about it, because that will help us on the website and on social media to build this new narrative that we want to co-create about hope and about change that is on its way. The 3 ways of participating. The first one is the stitch guide for an individual piece, which could be a tree, like these longer pieces that are 30 by 60 centimeters, or any other living being. So from any part of the entire tree of life. Non-tree species, we usually put them on smaller pieces that are 30 by 30, just to give the forest interesting movement and shape. We invite you to pick species that mean something to you. Again, recycle fabric, your old clothes. It's much more meaningful that way. It really is. If you use your children's old clothes, then there's a whole nother layer of meaning for you in that creation. And you can share that with us when you make your statement. All our guides are on our website, and they are very clear and specific about the sizes, the measurements for the buttons and the buttonholes. On our website, there's also a link for interesting things to listen to while you're stitching. So we hope you can make most of those. And finally, the statements. These are the measurements. You can find all this information on the website, but I wanted to include it here just so you've seen it once and you know where to look for it. So the finished piece is 30 by 60 centimeters on the left, or a non-tree species is 30 by 30 centimeters. And in all of them, the buttons and the buttonholes are 22 centimeters apart, but you have to measure that from the center line so that they hang straight. So that's 11 centimeters either side of the center line. That's the main thing that we need to pay attention to. And so when you're designing your tree or your other species, don't put anything important in the bottom 4 centimeters of your design, because it will get covered up by the next tree when they get buttonholed together. Right, now the next two guides, guide 2 and guide 3, are for collective pieces where, as you can see in the picture, many hands are working on the same embroidery. For me, these are wonderful. So when this project started in 2021, we were still in under pandemic restrictions, and it was really hard to imagine anything like this happening. But now that we can, bringing people together to work on things simultaneously and therefore have a conversation and get to know each other and be a bit more friends and have a bit more confidence to share things, this is powerful. This is where the changes are going to start happening. This proposal, guide 2, is about reflecting what we're already doing. What is it that we're doing? What are we learning? What do we gain as participants? What are we contributing to our local communities? These, you can make them 60 by 60 or other multiples of 30, again, so that we can match up the buttons. And we are working on creating a little video tutorial on how to locate your buttons and buttonholes on larger pieces. Well, I have one here, but I don't think you can see me, so I won't show it to you right now. And then there are lots of ways of getting organized to do this. I think you need to have probably 1 or 2 initial sessions where everybody gets together and brainstorms and shares, and how can you put lots of different ideas into the same piece and start cutting out your fabrics. And then there can be more moments where everybody comes together and you literally sit around the table like this, like in the picture. And then there are other times where somebody takes it home to finish the lettering or to sew on some of the leaves or whatever it is that you choose. And finally, also a collective statement about what it meant to all of the people that were involved to create this piece together. And here are some examples. On the left, we have 2 examples in Mexico, and on the right, we have 2 examples in Argentina. They're different community groups. On the top left, they're reforesting a volcano in Mexico City that has been deforested for hundreds of years. On the bottom left, they're rescuing a forest, a relict forest that miraculously survived in the middle of their urban neighborhood. On the right, there's a group of neighbors defending an old factory site that's been abandoned for decades and has turned, in effect, into a forest. And they are asking for it to be opened as a public park. And on the bottom right, we have a group who have started a wonderful urban garden on abandoned railway lands. So wonderful stories, all of them. And then guide 3. How can we represent our collective imagination? This is really an invitation to dive in detail and with all of our senses, as Rob Hopkins would say, into what 2030 could be like if everyone did everything within their power to protect life. We have specific guides to help groups organize these workshops, but the idea here is really that the imagination where everything is disastrous is so easy to connect with, right? It's in our cultural background. The idea of the apocalypse in the Western world is ever powerful. And now with the news about every new cyclone, every new hurricane, every new forest fire, it's so easy to connect with that disaster. And it's in so much cultural media. And how many films have you seen about the end of the world? But that we have to be able to imagine something different. Like if you want to make a cake, you have to be able to imagine what you want it to look like. It might not turn out exactly as you planned, but you have to be able to imagine it so that you can go out and do the shopping to get your ingredients to make your cake. And so we need to be able to imagine really deeply, really powerfully, so that we can then start building, start making this beautiful future cake that we want. And so again, these pieces are usually bigger because they're collective. 60 by 60 is like the easiest, larger size. If you go bigger than that, you probably need somebody that really knows what they're doing with the sewing machine. But I think in this group, there are plenty of those. And it can be a single image like the ones in Guide 2, which are made together. But it can also be several smaller pieces. I've got some pictures coming up. And again, we are preparing the video tutorial on how to place buttons and buttonholes on larger pieces. So here's two examples here in Mexico. On the left, we have a workshop where a family was working together on their vision of the future. And so I suggested to them that they make one bigger piece, and this is like their family vision of a city with blue skies and solar panels and urban gardens on the roofs of the houses, and so much more green, and rivers. Mexico City had 53 rivers. We don't have any rivers anymore. So they imagined that those were being recovered. And on the right-hand side, we have an imagination workshop in a public space where none of the people participating really knew each other. And so we worked on all these separate pieces. And the idea is that they will take them home and finish them and give them back to us so that we can patchwork them together. And that will be the vision that we had collectively on the 30th of March. So it really depends where you're thinking about getting people to sit down together, which sort of technique is best for you. But we're sharing those alternatives, those options. And this is one that they did in Brazil, where so you have lots of little pieces of how people were imagining the future, and then this is the design that Bri in Sao Paulo is planning to put them all together as a 60 by 60 piece. I don't know if there are any questions in the chat. I can't really see. This might be a good place to make a pause and answer questions if they've come up. Amuchi.
Hi, Dora.
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
Yes.
I think I think I've seen your work in Glasgow.
Oh, wow.
In 2016. I was really well impressed. So when I saw this, Leanne posted it on our group. So I said to join. I think I'm joining with another mom from Nigeria. So I wasn't getting everything well, but I wanted to ask if I can connect again later on this because it will be interesting. But I don't know if you have any contacts in Africa and if you have any way of getting, if we have something, it might not be exactly the kind of thing you're doing, but it could be something from our own environment.
Yes, we can certainly talk later, and we're open to ideas.
Okay.
Always open to ideas.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Nice
much.
of your
Wonderful
ear.
to see you. Any other questions? Well, I only had a couple of slides left. Maybe just go back to, so what groups can participate? Really anybody that is doing anything that is, that we have them in 3 categories here: holding action, so people slowing down and holding up the damage caused by the dominant political economy. So everything that, against everything that pushes consumerism, mega projects, all these things that are controlling the mindset and driving us in the wrong direction. But then also all the people who are working on creating and relearning the life-sustaining systems and practices. So regenerative agriculture, community currencies, new economic ideas, community energy management and eco-building, and all groups that are working on a shifting consciousness. But I would actually also add here people who are working to look after each other. So for example, groups, community groups that set up to help disabled youth do what they need to do in their community. There's a group in Mexico City who taught people with various different physical disabilities and who need wheelchairs how to repair wheelchairs. And so now there's actually a collective of people who live in wheelchairs who go every month and set up in a public space and help the local community mend their wheelchairs. I think that's just wonderful. So anything that is radical care for the earth and all living beings, all of those groups are invited, are welcomed, and it inspires us every time we hear of a new initiative. We are, like, staying in touch and connecting amongst ourselves is an important part of this project, because that way we realize that there are so many more of us doing these things. So we're trying to arrange at least monthly virtual meetings. We're managing it in Spanish. We've been having 1 or 2 meetings a month in Spanish and at least 1 in Portuguese. We will hopefully be able to, this is the beginning of our work in English. So it'll depend a little bit how many people connect and how many people reach out to us, but we hope to be able to connect as often as possible from now at least until November. And then I had some frequently asked questions here, but we've already covered some of them. The only one that we haven't mentioned here is, will we get them back? And the answer to that is we don't have capacity to send hundreds of textiles back to their places of origin. We are at the moment thinking about if there were groups in certain localities that have a plan and want to keep a bit of forest to show it. For example, in Sweden, they're going to keep using their Forest of Hope in local campaigns to support Sami activism. In Mexico and in Argentina, there are already groups that are committed to supporting local actions. So the idea is that after COP, the forest will go back to those locations. If there was a group in another country that knew that they were going to do that, then certainly we could send them back some forest, but we cannot at all commit to sending individual embroideries back to people. The idea is, in fact, to keep the collective together, not to take it apart. And I think that's all I had to say today. If there are any more questions, I would love to hear from you, either now or later by email. Any thoughts, any reactions? If you could all leave us your email, then we can start being in touch. Pinky, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to tell you there's a page on the website, Contact, and there you have three, help me out, Dora, what's the name in English? We have three formularios,
3 Google Forms.
three Google Forms where you can register to join. And then there's another one to ask questions. And then there's a third one. When you're finished, you can send us a picture and your story so we can document everything and bring your voices to the COP30 in Belém. So that's the page to look for now. So thank you all.
Thank you, Anki.
Nice to see that there's so many people from different places, and I think with different stories, and I think with different crafts too. So I think this will be just wonderful.
More and more
Very.
exciting.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, it's 8:04 here. We're almost on time. I don't want to take any more of your time, but anybody who has any other questions or queries or brilliant ideas, we're always interested in the brilliant ideas. Get in touch. Victoria put a message in the chat. Humans were designed to create.
Yes, so beautiful.
You get depressed when all you do is consume. Oh, perfect. Thank you, Victoria. So perfect. I do think it's so important to make stuff. It makes it possible to think about the hard stuff. Well, thank you very, very much for being here, and let's keep going. Let's stay in touch and build something beautiful.